video tutoring, and consulting. Also, worldwide networks, such as the Internet, allow the adult learner to organize a learning session for himself or for herself and use the vast amount of available information throughout the world for individualized learning. However, much work remains to be done to individualize and even personalize distance education through better hardware design, adopting expert systems and artificial intelligence software to make the computer responsive to personal learning needs, and installing new telecommunications lines or upgrading existing ones to carry more data faster to and from home or school and the place of work, to allow access to needed instruction from wherever the learners are or whenever they need such learning services. What has been the market and evolution of teleconferencing and distance education technology? Since the adoption of radio for distance education purposes in the 1920s, teleconferencing and distance education has grown exponentially throughout the world. For example, today 20 million people worldwide use the Internet, and its user population is growing at a rate of 1,000 persons a day. Also, in today's business environment, several factors have led to the wide adoption of distance education and teleconferencing among businesses, industries, public service agencies, and educational institutions. These factors generally relate to the need to decrease the cost of travel and transportation for employees and students, decrease the time spent on traveling or commuting for employees and students, decrease the cost of manufacturing and business processes by sharing expertise among professionals in different work sites, decrease the cost of building new buildings for schools and university campuses by providing educational services to places of work and homes, provide more access to education and training, and provide many sources of information to learners as possible. For these reasons, the number of people who use telecommunications for educational and business solutions are increasing dramatically. Let's turn our attention to the state of compressed video. All indications show that the use of compressed video is going to increase in the future. For example, the California State University system, comprised of 20 campuses and serving 340,000 students, is installing a compressed video system on all its campuses to facilitate instructional services as well as administrative meetings and conferences. Recently, the state of California awarded a contract to one of the manufacturers of compressed video systems so that public institutions using funds provided by the state could purchase compressed video systems without going through the usual time-consuming bid process. Also, attendance in recent national and international distance education conferences at sessions discussing compressed video systems has been steadily increasing. However, in this era of rapid change in the telecommunications industry, it is difficult, if not impossible, to predict the future of any technology. In the telecommunication industry, time shrinks to smaller chunks. What is considered short-term in other industries may be long-term for telecommunications. For example, the useful life of a computer may be 18 months to 2 years. Relatively speaking, 2 years is not considered long-term, for example, for getting a master's degree. However, a 2-year computer is an old computer. Whether compressed video is going to have an independent life for itself or coexist with desktop video as a complementary system is hard to say. One thing, however, is certain. In the history of media, no new medium has ever replaced an older medium. new media always become promoters of old media. For example, when radio appeared in the US in the 1920s, the record industry thought that it will be replaced by the broadcast industry. However, as it turned out, radio became the medium to promote records, as television and theaters promote video cassettes today. The future of teleconferencing and distance education technology will be defined by new standards in television broadcasting and telecommunications. Examples of these standards are high-definition television, or HD TV, in the case of TV broadcasting, and a whole host of broadband telecommunications standards such as BISDN, or Broadband Integrated Services Digital Networks, or ATM, or Asynchronous Transfer Mode. What these systems provide for the managers, educators, and trainers are more flexibility in choosing origination site and receiving site interface systems, more channel capacity, and ease of use in integrating basic media of communication, that is voice, image, and text. HDTV and ATM technologies are bound to change the world of telecommunications once again and provide us with new possibilities in education, training, and management, possibilities which may not have been even conceived yet. As a professional in training, education, and management, you will have the opportunity to create the future applications of these exciting technologies.
Again, we invite your questions and comments. A teleconference is only as strong as its multiple participants. Please use that return link now and bring your interests to our attention. We begin this question and answer session with a fax that we've received from Los Cabos, the Universidad Autónoma de Baja California Sur. The question is, in regard to reception of audio signal via satellite, is it true that the analog audio equipment will be replaced this year by digital equipment for the audio reception in broadcast stations? Mr. Zamudio.
De difusión. Well, there is a tendency to leave the analog systems behind because the digital systems have a much better quality as far as signal to noise, and it also uses a less width of band from the satellite. And so the new systems that are being used in the satellite, that the satellite is using in order to transmit the high quality signals are the digital signals. And some companies, radio companies in Mexico, are also switching now to the audio digital. However, there is no deadline or any limit to say, well, this year everybody's going to change. No, it's going to be a gradual thing, and it's going to be depending on the needs of the users of the satellite. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have a call from Buenos Aires, Argentina, by telephone. Welcome to our teleconference.
My question goes for the engineer from Telecom. I understand, because you have answered something like this before, that you are establishing a network in Mexico. What my question is, are you in the position of establishing some kind of circuit with Argentina, and if that's the case, through what satellite could you do this? Well, we have the capability of establishing video conferences with any country in the world, and we have done it through satellites, through the Intelsat and North American satellites, and also through PanamSat. Our satellite has a coverage of the Argentine region. However, we currently don't have any agreements, concrete agreements, in order to use the satellite and cover South America, but this is feasible, of course. And we can have video conferences with any part of the world. I would ask you to give me your phone numbers, and so that I can send you some information from our commercial department so that you can get in touch with them and you can make any arrangements for video conferences that you may need in the future or now.
Thank you. We are most pleased to have Argentina included in this event. Our next question is by fax from Tampico, Tamaulipas. What is the difference between a VHS system and the so-called super VHS system?
It's a way of encoding the digital signal on tape, on videotape. And SVHS, generally speaking, is a superior standard than VHS.
As a follow-up, could I ask, is the popularity of the VHS system a question of marketing strategy or some technical superiority in relation to the beta systems that once competed so heavily with it?
Well, we know that beta had a superior technology than VHS. I'm not sure if I would define it in terms of marketing strategy, that is the acceptance of VHS, but I would define it in terms of consumer acceptance.
We have a question from that involves a little further. Is there not a certain amount of almost natural monopoly in a technology, that when several technologies compete in an area like this, that it is more efficient in the long run for only one to win out? And is there a problem with monopoly tendencies given that fact?
Yes, of course. At the outset, there are competing manufacturing standards and competing marketing strategies to win consumer acceptance, and at that point the consumers have a much wider choices. The problem occurs when one form of technology or one standard sort of wins the market, and then you're pretty much limited to that. And it is difficult to say what makes that. It's difficult to say what is the mechanism in the market or in the marketing strategies of companies to make that happen. But obviously, when there is no monopoly, there is a lot more choices for the consumers.
And then you have the problem that we have with computers, that you have so many choices, it's very difficult to make a real decision.
That's the downside of not having a standard. We always ask for standards because we want to communicate to each other, and when we get the standard, then we complain that the market is too limited.
Yes. We have a call from Guadalajara, Universidad de Guadalajara in Jalisco. Welcome.
Sí, para el ingeniero Manuel Zamudio.
This is for engineer Zamudio.
Ya él habló del tiempo de vida de un
He already spoke about the life cycle of a satellite.
¿Cuál es la capacidad
Lifetime.
de comunicación?
The question is, what is the capability that the Morelos has compared to the solidarity? In other words, at the same time, simultaneously, and how that works?
Yes.
Well, the question is very wide, and particularly because of the functioning and the capabilities of the satellite. I could very gladly send you the material to be able to answer your question as to the technical features and the way the satellites function, the operation of the functions of the satellites, as about the bands of the Solidarity has the same capacity as Morelos with 1,000 megahertz. However, at the KU bands, we are using both polarizations, and the Solidarity whereas in Morelos we only had one polarization. With this, we are doubling the capability of the KU, and also the width of the transponders and repetition stations. We have 8 transponders, and each polarization in solidarity, which means 16, and they have twice as much power, each one of these transponders, vis-a-vis the Morelos. Therefore, we are doubling capacity or capabilities, and we can provide better signals, or we can use that potential to put in more information in the transporting signals. And I will be able to send you a complete description of the differences between the capabilities and potential powers of both. Thank you very much.
And we are on the Morelos satellite now.
Estamos ahora utilizando el Yes, we are using Morelos 2 right now, and that's the satellite that we're still using. And on October 4, as I have mentioned before, we are expecting to launch the second Solidarity. So we'll have 3 satellites operational.
We have a question now by telephone from Pemex, in Villahermosa, Tabasco. Welcome to our teleconference.
We all know there are international standards for interaction through video conferences. We also know that we can use 5 video conferencing rooms right now, and just as telecom and some banking institutions. Tell us, what is the role that the Ministry of Transportation and Telecommunications plays in all this, because at some point we could all interact and we could share these all this technology.
Yes.
There is no norm or standard right now for video conferencing. We have 2 methods that have been adopted, and that's the analog video, the complete transponder, the normal, the NTSC system, and the other one that has been the compressed video in 2 megabits. And these 2 megabits allows for the teleconference to be able to go through the satellite, via satellite, as well as through the network of the telephone network that is integrated in Mexico. And this is what makes the coverage larger for a particular teleconference, and this we have not yet implemented because we would like a natural standard to arise from all this. As Dr. Saba was explaining, the ideal thing is to have a standard, but also the standard can limit and can create some kind of monopoly, and it can also be some sort of imposition from the state, from the government, from the state, in order to use a certain equipment or a certain brand name. And so I personally think that right now 2 megabits is a very reasonable standard that can be used for any video conference, any interactive video conference between several institutions.
It's very challenging that a consensus has to emerge over great distance among very different people for a standard to really be established. We have a question from our colleagues, our very active colleagues, again in Guadalajara, the Universidad de Guadalajara, a telephone call. Welcome.
Yes, adelante la pregunta. How feasible is it in terms of operation? And what are the real costs to operate this technology? For teleconferencing, via computer, the desktop computers. If you think about the applications for the universities, for the public universities in Mexico, where budgets are rather limited. The problem that we have in the public universities is the budget, and we have limited budget. Will you please comment on that?
A very good question.
Muy buena pregunta.
The realities of budgeting.
Yes, we have limited budgets here at San Diego State University too, and we try to work within those limitations. Desktop video conferencing is expensive, but in order to use a computer for conferencing, you don't have to have video. In several of our classes, we have been able to do text-based computer-mediated conferencing very successfully. I use computer-mediated conferencing in my courses for having students to communicate among each other regarding the readings for the course, their textbook for the course. So that's a less expensive way of doing media conferencing. As far as desktop video conferencing is concerned, you have the cost of the computer itself, the cost of the video board inside the computer, and the cost of telecommunications. There are several costs related to telecommunications. There are connecting charges, monthly fees, and usage fees. So you need to get to know your local telephone company and ask them exactly what it costs to have telecommunication services for desktop video conferencing.
Thank you very much for your answers, and also to all our participants for their excellent questions. This has been another marvelous experience. We must now conclude this international teleconference event. Thanks to all of you so much for your participation. It is increasingly clear that teleconferencing technologies are becoming more available, more diverse, and cheaper and smaller at the same time. This means that what was once an option only for a rich few has become available and of practical value for many more. It is not easy to put on a teleconference. An immense amount of work goes on behind the scenes to set it up and to carry it off. We give thanks now to all those many people here at KPBS Television, at the International Training Center, and at each downlink receiver site for all you have done to make this teleconference work. We are also most grateful to Dr. Farhad Saba and Mr. Juan Manuel Zamudio for bringing their vast expertise to us today. We invite all of you back for the third in our current series of teleconferences on telecommunication for education and professional development. The next session on February 16th will consider the important possibilities of distance education, alternative models, and implementation. As you know, distance education can bring the immense benefits of learning to many more people, moving them, their communities, and their countries rapidly forward. We hope you will join us in February to explore how this can be done. I'm Dr. Michael Reel. For all of us here in San Diego, until next time, thank you.